India before 1947 was not a country, not in the way we think of it now. It was a vast land, a subcontinent teeming with diversity. For hundreds of years the British had been there, running India, making money, classic colonialism. They built railways, schools, and administrative buildings, but World War II? That changed things. Britain, they were broke. India, they wanted freedom. The war drained British resources and weakened their grip on the colonies. Things were tense. Real tense. Protests, strikes, and civil disobedience were becoming the norm. Imagine a giant tapestry. Different religions, languages, cultures, all woven together. Hindus, Muslims, Sikhs, Christians, and many others. That was India under the British Raj, a complex mosaic of traditions and beliefs. For centuries, people lived side by side. They shared markets, festivals, and sometimes even homes. Muslims, Hindus, Sikhs, all part of the same fabric. Their lives intertwined in countless ways, but this fabric was starting to fray. The unity was under strain. British rule, while bringing some order, also sowed seeds of division. Policies of divide and rule created deep fissures. They favored some groups over others, creating resentment and mistrust. Economic disparities and political favoritism fueled the fire. By the 1940s, India was a pressure cooker. The air was thick with the desire for change. The demand for independence was reaching boiling point. Leaders like Gandhi and Nehru were rallying the masses. But how do you grant freedom to such a diverse land? A land with so many voices and aspirations? The answer, as it turned out, was messy and painful. Partition, a division that left scars still felt today. The British didn't invent religious differences in India. What they did was exploit them. They needed someone to rule over, right? Divide and rule, that was the game. They gave preferential treatment to certain religious groups, turning communities against each other. It was like whispering poison in one ear, then switching sides, and doing the same thing. By the 20th century, the idea of separate Hindu and Muslim nations was gaining traction. Convenient for the British, wouldn't you say? A divided India was easier to control. Now let's rewind a bit. To truly understand the British Raj, we need to go back to its roots. Before the Raj, there was the British East India Company, a powerful trading entity that laid the groundwork for British rule. These guys were like the OGs of corporate colonialism, setting the stage for a new kind of empire. They came to India in the 1600s to trade spices, but their ambitions quickly grew. They ended up running the whole damn show, controlling vast territories, and they were masters of manipulation, using cunning strategies to expand their influence. They played local rulers against each other, funded wars, and basically turned India into their own personal chessboard. Their divide and conquer tactics were ruthless but effective. Their policies, focused on profit above all else, weakened existing power structures and deepened social divisions. They exploited resources and people, creating a legacy of exploitation. It was like they were setting the stage for partition centuries in advance, sowing seeds of discord that would later erupt into full-blown conflict. Their long game was both strategic and devastating. Section 4. Independence at a Price, the 1947 Partition and its immediate aftermath. This was a monumental event that reshaped the subcontinent. Fast forward to 1947. The air was thick with anticipation and uncertainty. Britain, tired of dealing with India's demands for freedom, decides to leave. The British Empire, once sprawling, was now retracting. But here's the kicker. They decide to split the country into two. This decision was made hastily, with little regard for the people living there. India for the Hindus, Pakistan for the Muslims. This division was based on religious lines, a simplistic solution to a complex problem. It was a rushed job, a chaotic mess. And the people? They were caught in the crossfire of political decisions. They were left to deal with the fallout. Families were torn apart, homes were abandoned, millions were displaced, forced to migrate to countries they had never known. Violence erupted, the journey was perilous, and many did not survive. It was a humanitarian catastrophe. Relief efforts were overwhelmed, and the scale of suffering was immense. Neighbors turned on neighbors, fueled by fear and uncertainty. Communities that had coexisted for centuries were now divided. The scars of that violence are still felt today. The legacy of partition continues to shape the relationship between India and Pakistan. Section 5. Scars of separation, long-term impacts on India and Pakistan. The partition didn't just divide land, it divided families, communities, and identities. India and Pakistan, born out of chaos, inherited a legacy of mistrust and animosity. Both nations have spent decades trying to heal from the trauma of partition. The conflict over Kashmir, the rise of religious extremism, the constant shadow of war, these are all, in part, legacies of that hasty division. Before 1940, India was under British rule. The British Raj, as it was known, had a profound impact on the Indian subcontinent. It brought modernization, but also exploitation. By the 20th century, a growing desire for independence began to emerge among Indians. The Indian subcontinent was home to diverse religious communities. Hindus and Muslims were the two largest groups. They coexisted for centuries, but under British rule, tensions began to rise. Different political aspirations and communal differences started to create a divide. The Indian National Congress, primarily led by Hindus, advocated for a unified and independent India. However, many Muslims felt their voices were not being heard. They worried about their future in a Hindu-majority independent India. This growing sense of Muslim identity and the need for a separate homeland became increasingly prominent in the years leading up to 1940. The political landscape of India was changing, and the demand for a separate Muslim state was gaining momentum. The stage was set for a pivotal moment in South Asian history. In March 1940, the All India Muslim League held its annual session in Lahore. This event would prove to be a turning point in the struggle for independence. The Muslim League, led by Muhammad Ali Jinnah, passed a historic resolution that came to be known as the Lahore Resolution. The resolution declared that the Muslim-majority areas of India should be constituted as independent states. This marked a significant shift in the Muslim League's stance. It formally demanded a separate homeland for Muslims, signaling their determination to secure their own destiny. The Lahore Resolution was a defining moment in the Pakistan movement. It articulated the aspirations of millions of Indian Muslims who felt marginalized and unheard. It provided a clear vision for the future, one where Muslims could live in a land where their rights, culture, and identity were protected. The resolution was met with mixed reactions. The Congress and the British initially rejected it. However, the demand for Pakistan had been voiced, and there was no turning back. The Lahore Resolution became the cornerstone of the Pakistan movement, galvanizing Muslims across India to strive for their own nation. Muhammad Ali Jinnah emerged as the preeminent leader of the Muslim League and the driving force behind the demand for Pakistan. He is revered in Pakistan as Quaid-e-Azam, meaning great leader. Jinnah's vision, statesmanship, and unwavering resolve were instrumental in the creation of Pakistan. Jinnah was a shrewd politician and a brilliant lawyer. He initially advocated for Hindu-Muslim unity and worked alongside Congress leaders for a united India. However, he became disillusioned by the Congress's unwillingness to address Muslim concerns and their vision of a centralized India. Jinnah believed that Muslims and Hindus were two distinct nations with different cultures, traditions, and ways of life. He argued that a united India would only lead to the marginalization of Muslims. He envisioned Pakistan as a separate homeland where Muslims could live according to their own laws and principles. Jinnah's leadership was crucial in uniting Muslims under a common goal. He traveled extensively, rallying support for the Pakistan movement. His message of hope and self-determination resonated with millions of Muslims who saw in him a leader who could secure their future. The period between 1940 and 1947 was marked by intense political activity and growing tensions. World War II had a profound impact on India. The British after the war were eager to leave India. However, the question of how to divide the subcontinent remained a major point of contention. The Muslim League, under Jinnah's leadership, continued its campaign for Pakistan. The demand gained momentum after the Lahore Resolution. Muslims across India rallied behind Jinnah, and the Pakistan movement gained widespread support. The Congress, however, remained opposed to the idea of partition, advocating for a united India. Several attempts were made to find a solution that would satisfy both Muslims and Hindus. The British sent various missions to India to negotiate a settlement, but none succeeded. The Cabinet Mission Plan of 1946 proposed a loose federation with significant autonomy for provinces. The plan was initially accepted by both the Muslim League and the Congress, but it ultimately failed due to disagreements over its interpretation. As negotiations faltered, communal tensions escalated across India. Riots and violence erupted in various parts of the country, claiming thousands of lives. The situation deteriorated rapidly, making the partition of India increasingly inevitable.